What's up guys, it's Cody. Today we're going to be talking about lease options and how you can add this strategy to your real estate investing toolbox. I'm going to be using the second home that I bought to show you exactly what this is and how it works. The most important thing is that you understand how this works, what the pros and cons are, and how you can actually go and use this in your own business. Now, there's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about, but this is potentially a great way that you can get into a home for no money down, or potentially get a really good deal on a home that's actually worth more, meaning that you buy it under market value. This is also a common strategy on homes that have very little to no equity. It's important to have a lot of different strategies in your real estate investing toolbox so that when you go and you're talking to sellers or you're looking at properties, you have multiple ways that you can approach them and try to get the home under contract to purchase it. Sometimes one type of investing strategy may work for one seller, but it won't work for somebody else. So it's good to have multiple options so that you can make sure you don't leave money on the table. So jumping right into it, this home was actually supposed to originally be a seller finance mortgage wrap. I'm going to be explaining what that is a little bit in this video here, but the main premise of this video is going to be talking about lease options, what they are and how they work. This home actually ended up being a lease option. Just like I had talked about, the seller ended up not quite being comfortable enough with the seller financing terms, and he elected to go with the lease option. Now, the terms of the deal were actually pretty much the same, so it didn't really make a difference for me because I knew that I was going to perform and purchase the property. Now, there were other parts of this deal that were negotiated that gave me a stronger upside in being able to control the property and make sure that I could maximize my return on the investment. So at the very basic level, what a lease option is, which may also be called a rent to own, is where you're essentially leasing the property from the seller, and at the same time you're signing an option to purchase agreement, which gives you the right to purchase the property at a future date at an already agreed upon price. It's important to remember that these are two separate things. One is the lease, the other is the option to purchase. The other thing that's important to note here is that typically with the option to purchase, they do require an option fee, which is kind of like an upfront down payment, showing that you're putting up some collateral in order to have the option to purchase the home. This means that if the property goes up in value, you're the one that's benefiting because you've already determined what that price is a year or maybe 2 years in advance. Whereas if the property decreases in value, you don't have to purchase the property, right? This just gives you the right to purchase it, but you don't actually have to execute on that. However, it is pretty typical that you will lose the option fee if you decide not to purchase the home. We're going to be talking about the pros and cons of this, but these are important things to keep in mind. So let's jump into the case study here. This is the second home that I bought. It's a home that I moved into from the townhome that I was living in before. And this new home actually had a mother-in-law apartment in the basement. So this made a great investment for me. I was going to move into the property, rent out the basement so that I could have somebody else cover the majority of the mortgage and I could live for very cheap. So jumping into the numbers, the purchase price on this home was $242,000. The seller wanted $37,000 as the down payment or the option fee that I was putting up in order to have the option to purchase the home. And because this was such a large amount of money, I used $17,000 of my own money and I got a hard money loan for the other $20,000. Because the seller was basically leasing the property to us, they actually didn't do anything to their mortgage. Now, I briefly mentioned that we were originally supposed to do a mortgage wrap, which is another investing strategy we'll talk about at a future time. But in this case, they didn't have to do anything to it. They were basically just leasing the property to us, knowing that at some future date, we were going to purchase the home. For them, they were trying to move on. They had some other obligations that they had to take care of, and they really just wanted to be cashed out of the property. Now, you might be saying, well, Cody, why didn't they just list the home on the market? They could have got a better price for this home. And while yes, that is true, there was a couple factors in why they did not want to do that. Number one, they didn't want their neighbors to know that they were selling. Number two, their home needed some work. They didn't have the money to do the repairs and they didn't have the money to invest into the home to be able to get that full market value. And number three, they didn't know how to smash that like button like you're about to do right now. If you guys would, just click the like button below. I'd really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and drop a comment below. But really, guys, the reason why they didn't put the home on the market is they really wanted the flexibility of being able to sell on their terms and move out at a specific date. So in this situation, they had actually already been cashed out of the property once I gave them that $37,000 option fee, because the principal balance on their loan was exactly what we had lined up with the purchase price. So the purchase price was $242,000. We put $37,000 down. This left me with a balance of $205,000, which was the balance on their existing mortgage. Now, the important thing here, the reason why we did it this way, is that I had negotiated with them that any pay down on the mortgage that was going to take place until I purchased the home would benefit me. So when I made the payment each and every month, anything that was paid down on the mortgage would then come back to me once I actually owned the home. Because they had such a great interest rate on their mortgage, and because they were already a few years into it, meaning that they were further ahead on their amortization schedule, this meant that the principal balance on the loan was actually getting paid down an additional $75 per month more than it would have if we'd gone with a seller finance strategy. The other thing about this deal is that I negotiated to have full ownership control of the property, which in most cases is not the situation when you're leasing the property from the owner. What this really did is this gave me the ability to, one, put utilities into my name. It gave me the ability to make repairs to the property and benefit from those repairs. It also gave me the ability to get the tax benefits for the property. So I gained the ability to actually take what was being paid for mortgage interest and use that as a deduction on my taxes. It actually also gave me the ability to rent out the basement legally so that I didn't have problems with my lease and subletting. The other thing that I should mention here is that we handled the payments through an escrow company. So the seller left their mortgage in place. I was making payments to them through an escrow company. The escrow company was paying the mortgage for the seller. We did it this way because I wanted to make sure that if I'm paying on this property and I've already given them $37,000 as an option fee, that the mortgage continues to get paid and they don't just take that money that I'm paying them each and every month and not pay the mortgage, and then the property gets foreclosed on. So I ended up living there for 1 year. The payment on the home that I paid each month was $1,400. I rented out the basement for $975, leaving me with a $400 a month payment for my living expenses in addition to the utilities. After 1 year, I actually found another property that I wanted to move into, and I decided that it would actually be best to sell this property instead of keeping the home. Another thing that you might be asking yourself is, well,
Cody, why didn't you just rent out the top floor where you were living and continue to rent out the basement?
I could have done this, and the potential rents could have been anywhere from $2,200 to $2,400 per month. However, there were a lot of downsides with this particular property. This home really needed so much work that it wasn't worth the potential upside to take on this much risk. This also meant that I wouldn't have been able to qualify for a new home. At the time, my credit profile and the income that I was making would not have been enough, even with this potential rental income, to be able to offset my debts enough in order to get qualified for this new investment, which actually ended up being a significantly better deal. Guys, this home had tons of problems, and it's the exact reason why I decided not to keep it, and the reason why I wanted to cash out of the property as soon as I found this next home. The list of problems on the home goes from concrete work in the back, to needing a new driveway, to needing all brand new windows and a new roof. The garage was really just a carport that had been enclosed, so it wasn't really built properly. It needed all new flooring, all new paint in the home. It had a lot of problems that really needed to be fixed that just wasn't worth the investment. All in all, the repairs that added up on this property would have been about $50,000 to $55,000, and it didn't make sense to put that much money into this property just to make a couple of $100 extra each month. So what did we do? We actually ended up cashing out of the property. In the end, we actually did end up going back to a traditional seller finance. So we renegotiated the lease option we put it into a seller finance so that I could get my name on title. The one thing about a lease option is that because you're leasing the property from the owner, your name is not the actual name on the title. In order to sell the property, I needed to have my name on the property. Now, you might remember just a minute ago, you said, well, Cody, you already negotiated these ownership rights and you already negotiated the ability to sell the home, even if that meant you had to buy it and then sell it the same exact day. Yes, that is true. However, I wanted to do this seller finance option before I actually sold the home, just to make sure I didn't run into any legality issues and to make sure that everything was on the up and up with the seller and the bank. So I went back to the seller. I explained to them that we already had a buyer lined up for the property and that we were going to cash out and move. And the seller said, yeah, that's fine. At that point in time, they were comfortable with me and the deal. And we converted things from the lease option to an actual seller finance mortgage wrap. Again, we're going to talk about what a mortgage wrap is in future videos, but for now, it's basically just taking the existing mortgage that's on the property, and the seller gives me a mortgage that surrounds that existing mortgage on the property from the bank. This property was probably worth about $260,000 when we bought it. If they had thrown it on the market, that's what it would have sold for. If you remember, we got it for $242,000. The price that we actually sold this home at after just living there for 1 year was $300,000. We had some agent fees and of course some closing costs, but this left us with about $80,000 left over after paying that and paying off the existing mortgage on the property. This means that we doubled our money in just 1 year, not to mention the fact that we also got to live for that year for just about $500 or $600 per month. So guys, I hope that gives you a pretty good idea of what a lease option is, how to use it, what the pros and cons are, and decide whether or not this is something that you want to add to your investing strategy. So again, guys, please click the like button below to help me out with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell if you haven't already to get notified when I drop new videos like this. And of course, leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear if you've done a lease option or if you have interest in doing one in the future. I promise I'll get back to you, and until next time.